Sometimes, guys, sometimes a sitcom needs the help of the laugh track to help remind the audience, you, that it's actually funny. And I think The Crew on Netflix might just be one of those shows. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Candi and Popcorn. I'm Candice James, and here we talk all things TV and movies. While you're here, go ahead, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's get started on today's content. In today's video about The Crew on Netflix, there will be no spoilers. I was feeling a little glam today, and so I glammed up, you know. I'm feeling good, so we want to look good. Sometimes y'all gonna catch me on here in a t-shirt, and that just means that's what I was feeling for the day. But I had the time, I had the energy, and I wanted to be girly. You know, Jackie Aina says that we need to celebrate the good things that are happening in our lives and make sure that we're constantly using them. And so this is an opportunity for me to put on a little bit of makeup and glam up for y'all and me. The Crew on Netflix stars Kevin James. We know him from The King of Queens, from Paul Blart Mall Cop. And it also stars Sarah Stiles, which most people may not be familiar with her, but she also starred in Billions most recently. She plays Bonnie Bolera, one of Axe Capital traders on the show. And so it's really great seeing her in a comedic role, which is super different than what she did on Billions. So what the hell is The Crew on Netflix? Well, it's a 30-minute sitcom, which has very Southern American roots. So the show centers around a failing NASCAR crew company, and the show also is very pro-guns, pro-hunting, you know, pro the American anthem. And I will say, even with all that, they have a very diverse cast. It's as if the show is really trying to appeal to both Democrats and Republicans. And if you don't know, studies have shown that many shows either appeal to one audience or the other. And I'll give you an example. When it comes to comedy, liberals tend to like very snarky humor. So think Community, think Portlandia, also Modern Family and Broad City. But conservatives tend to like TV shows based off of real estate or based off of business. So think HGTV House Flippers or shows like Duck Dynasty. This is all information coming from Experience Simmons, which is a marketing and media research company. I will link all of my research, all of my references in the description below. So I want you guys to be able to fact find yourselves. I will link everything. People who consider themselves as liberals, they find in the research that they usually gravitate towards shows with strong female leads. Think The Mindy Project, think Scandal. They also like characters that are flawed or broken, so Mad Men or Shameless. Conservatives tend to gravitate towards shows with strong male leads, so think about Top Gear. Also love cop shows, Blue Bloods, NCIS. This isn't something that has happened recently with our more polarized political environment. This is actually something that's been going on for decades. A lot of this research began back in the early 2000s, and they saw that there are a few shows that appeal to both audiences. And these are shows that almost lack politics. So think of Dancing with the Stars, think of American Idol. America's Home Video is another one that has a really large following between either Republicans or Democrats. Then there's also Orville or Star Trek Discovery that's currently on TV. I think what this shows is no matter where on the diverse spectrum you fall, whether you are white, black, Asian, Latinx, whether you are LGBTQ, it doesn't matter. You know, we all like to see little kids falling down and us laughing at little kids. And we are all Trekkies. So, to infinity and beyond. So in understanding the polarized nature of television, my question is The Crew the new conservative sitcom? So while sitcoms generally tend to skew to the more liberal side, there are a couple of shows in the past that have been for a conservative audience. So we have Roseanne, which debuted in 1988 and ran all the way until 1997. We also have Seventh Heaven. They were on from 1966 all the way until 2007. We've got Last Man Standing. That's a show that's actually still currently on television, and that began in 2011. We have Kevin Can Wait, which ran for 2 years from 2016 to 2018, and then also The Conners, which is actually still on television. Most people probably don't know that. Just because Roseanne Barr got fired from the show, they did not actually cancel the show, and they continued without her, and that show is within its 3rd season. So what makes these sitcoms that are for a conservative audience, what makes them different than a liberal sitcom? Well, usually these shows are really big on family values, and they almost show the everyday man. They also have a very Christian religious background, whether it's outspoken or not. There's a lot of Christian values to that. And when we're talking about having a Christian background, it's less in the way of preaching to you and more in the love thy neighbor kind of sense. But these shows also do a good job about tackling certain hot button issues, maybe things like adultery or periods or, premarital sex. So they will touch on those taboo topics, but again, always in a family-friendly, family values, Christian-based kind of way. Funny enough, conservative sitcoms actually haven't fared well in the last couple of years. We all know that Roseanne got canceled. Roseanne Barr was canceled after she made some racist comments on social media. And then also the sitcom Last Man Standing, which stars Tim Allen. This was actually started in 2011. It was actually canceled by ABC in 2016. And then it was picked up by Fox 2 years later in 2018, and the show is still running. Even with seeing the lack of conservative sitcoms on television, it's interesting to know that Republicans actually drive the majority of TV views for the biggest shows. For example, some of the biggest shows like Big Bang Theory or NCIS, American Idol, or Modern Family, these shows had a very large Republican following. In fact, when they did a study in 2010 and they looked at the top 10 largest rated shows, most of the audience tended to be more conservative than liberals. So it was just interesting to see that while there's not too much television for the conservative audience, they actually drive most of the TV watching and most of the ratings on television at the moment. So it's very interesting to see. So Kevin James stars in and produces in The Crew, and this is not his first conservative sitcom. We've seen him in King of Queens, and also a couple years ago he had Kevin Can Wait. So this is not his first rodeo in the conservative space. So I think it makes a lot of sense that he would be trying to create the next conservative comedy for television. Also very much in line with Kevin James and his background. So Kevin James is a proud Catholic. He has mentioned that before. He also states that he makes comedy. He makes things that he can watch with his family. So he stays away from cursing. He stays away from any provocative topics. So a conservative sitcom is right up his alley. And while he doesn't really talk too much about politics, I had to scour the internet to find his political background. And so he does vote Republican, although this is not something that he talks widely about. Now, Kevin recently did come out with a short that he released on his YouTube page back in May 2020 called Out of Touch. It's a 2-minute short film in which it starts off and you see two guys that are being hunted. There's dogs after them, policemen, there's a big chopper, and they're afraid for their lives. And when you're wondering why is there a manhunt for these two seemingly normal men, what you then see is this manhunt is all because they did not social distance. Now, again, this was released back in May of 2020, so this was the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. So in the film, you see that they didn't social distance, and onlookers saw them and called the police, and therefore now they're being hunted. Clearly, this is mainly for his more conservative audience, because I think it's a bit of a stretch. At the end of the day, coronavirus is real. People are dying. I think all people are asking is for you to wear a mask and for you to listen to the people who know what's happening, the scientists. Listen to them and do what they say so that we can all get out of this, together and alive. So I think it was a bit of a stretch, but it's more so falling in line again with some of his conservative beliefs. So let's get back to the actual show, The Crew. I think like most conservative sitcoms, it's really funny. I definitely think that there are some really funny laugh out loud moments for this show. However, the jokes are very PG. Again, Kevin James does not do anything provocative, nor does he use profanity. So the jokes are very PG. There's a lot of moments that you need the laugh track to help out the actual comedy. Like, you're watching this and you realize that that was a joke only because the laugh track went on. I think this show is definitely doing a good job in trying to play to both sides. Again, this is a conservative sitcom, but it does things like trying to switch up typical stereotypical tropes. So for example, usually there's a dumb blonde or dumb woman, and instead what they do is they use a dumb blonde man. There's a character there that embodies that stereotype. So it's good to see that they're not necessarily playing up the typical stereotypes that we see, but instead they're kind of throwing a different mix in there. There are 7 main actors on the cast, and within that group of 7 people, 3 of them are women. There is 1 Iranian Jewish man, and there's also a black man. And so that makes up for 5 of the 7 cast. I actually do think it's a very well diverse cast. Hopefully next time, Kevin James, think about casting a black woman. I think this show can appeal to everyone, and I really do hope that it gets picked up for more seasons. Hi, Gunther. Everyone say hello to Gunther. He loves when I record. He wants to be a star. But I do think that this show has the staying power. I think they're going to have to work on punching up their jokes a little bit better. Maybe you can keep it PG, but you don't necessarily need to make it so obvious. I think there's a lot of slapstick humor there, and so I think maybe you can work on the jokes just a little bit, but I am rooting for this show. Overall, this show is definitely in line with something that Kevin James would do. So I'm not surprised that this show is created and produced by him. While this show is definitely no The Office or The Big Bang Theory or Modern Family, which shows like this take a relatable everyday environment and really elevate it to comedy goodness, to comedy gold, to comedy genius. I don't think that Kevin James has managed to do this with this show. So it might not be a Modern Family, but it probably is The Goldbergs or a Last Man Standing, something that, you know, will definitely have staying power, just not as funny and won't capture such a large audience. Essentially good enough, but not great. I'll definitely keep watching this show because I think that it was entertaining. I'm rooting for it again. I hope that they get better writers to punch up some of those jokes. But Kevin James, I'm looking forward to seeing where this show goes. Again, guys, I'll link all the references for the research that I did in the show. I'll also be putting more information on shows that are considered conservative versus liberals. And that's all for today's content, guys. Go watch The Crew on Netflix and tell me what you think, because my page is a dialogue, not a monologue, and I always want to hear what you have to say. So find me in the comments, find me on social media. Also, guys, I release videos every 15th and 30th of the month with a lot of juicy bonus content in between. I think the last couple of weeks, I probably released 2 to 3 videos per week, so I'm still trying to find my rhythm and figure out when's the best time to release, but I'm definitely committing to the 15th and the 30th of every month with lots of stuff in between. So guys, until next time, cheers.